Hey everyone, welcome to a pre-ab moto. Today we're going to go over a pre-moto mobility drill. So not to be confused with a pre-moto warm-up, but more of a mobility drill session that you would do prior to even going out for practice, maybe even at home before you leave for the track. So this is going to be much different than if we're at the track to get our heart rate and our body temperature up and such things. So this is a mobility. So first things first is we're going to get into some static stretching. First thing is a pancake. So a pancake position is going to be different for everyone, of course. Okay, so legs go out pretty wide as comfortable for the individual. It also is helpful to have something back behind you sometimes, so be it a wall, a chair, whatever it is. From there, we're going to sit forward, and we're just going to hang out here for about 30 seconds or so. While in this position, we're going to feel the inside of our legs being our adductor muscles and the insides, which are 3 different muscles, and also the gracilis muscle, which runs all the way from the inner groin down into the inner knees. So we're just going to hang out in here. We're going to take some deep breaths while we're doing this. So we're going to focus on breathing down into the stomach rather than breathing up into the chest. This position is going to look a lot different for everyone. So you might get in this position, you might feel like you're up here, but eventually you'll be able to work your way back down. So after about 30 seconds, probably about 5 good breaths, we're going to go to one side. So we're going to reach over to the right side to start here. And stretching in general can be anywhere from 20 seconds to 40 seconds to 60 seconds, really depending upon the person. So it's really important to kind of listen to what your body is giving back to you in feedback. So if you reach for a spot like in this position here and you feel a lot of tension, so call it an 8 out of 10 in tension, all we're really looking to do is trying to get a reduction in tension. It's never going to go away. No matter how flexible you get or how mobile you get, tension in the muscle is always going to be there. So you just kind of have to listen to your body. And as you go and reach for this right side here, focusing on those deep breaths again down into the belly and releasing out. We're going to walk the hands across through the center where we started and now over to the left side. So exact same thing, we're feeling for a sensation, call it an 8 out of 10, and reducing that sensation down to hopefully somewhere in the range of 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, which means our muscles definitely have loosened up just a little bit in this position. These stretches being static, we're just trying to breathe and relax as much as we can. All right, great. Now we can go on to the next one, which is going to be a half kneeling hip flexor stretch. So half kneeling for instance is going to be one knee down, while full kneeling would be both knees down. So we're going into a half kneel. We're also going to focus on tucking the toe in the back. If you want to put something underneath your knees for comfort, of course, that's totally okay. So we got the toe tucked in the back. We're one knee down, 1 foot forward. Got kind of this 90 degree angle going. And now from here, we're going to focus on turning the torso straight with our hips, and we're going to flex and squeeze that down leg in the glute back here, which is going to force the hip forward into extension. And we're going to get a nice stretch up the quadricep through that front part of the leg into a little bit of the hip flexor there. So the rectus femoris, a quad muscle, but also helps with hip flexion. So if you're feeling something across the front right here, that's going to be that rectus femoris. If we want to intensify, we can reach up and then we banana bend to the opposite side in the stretch here, which is going to open up that whole side body and also the front even more, elongating that anterior front fascia, which connects everything all the way from the toes to the hands to the nose. Great. Switch sides. I'm just changing direction, but you don't have to. So once again, toes tucked in the back. This is really important. This actually makes or break this stretch quite a bit. So remember, we're going about 30 seconds or so. We can start in one position that's maybe not quite as intense. And as we loosen up a little bit more, and we're squeezing that glute forward to get that hip in extension, sitting nice and tall with our posture, we can then reach that opposite side up and elongate once again the fascia coming from that leg all the way up, in through the arm, up to the fingertips, and then we can side bend ever so slightly to increase that stretch even further. We're still focusing on the glute being squeezed, and we're also focusing on the breath going down rather than the breath going out of the chest. So we shouldn't feel our chest rise when we breathe. We should be breathing more downwards into the belly, which then we're going to feel more of an expansion through that diaphragm down into our belly. Awesome. Moving on, we have a table lat stretch. So I've got my box here, so I'm going to use the box as my tool for this, but you can do this on a table, a chair, even on your bike on the stand. So this is a really good stretch. We're going to stretch out our lat muscles, which run from the lower back and attach into our armpit area. And these are also the muscles that will help us with pulling back and locking the shoulder blades down, but also overhead, so our pull-up muscles. So for this stretch, two ways of doing it. We're going to do it the first way here, and we're just going to back ourselves down into the stretch, and we're going to pull back and hopefully get a nice stretch right underneath in that armpit area, and maybe even a little bit in the chest. Sometimes if you got a really tight chest, going overhead can start to stretch that chest area out as well. So we're just taking some good belly breaths in this position. We're going to hold for about 30 seconds or so. You can kind of play with it too. Like, stretching is a user-friendly thing, so whatever feels best for you as the individual and what your body is telling you is always going to be what you should listen to, because no one else can feel what you're feeling. Therefore, what you feel is most important. So that's going to be our table lat stretch version 1. Version 2 would be elbows, and then we take our hands, go into prayer position, and then we drop in while keeping that back rounded, and then we bring the hands back behind the head for shark fin. This starts to get in that connection between the lat muscles and also the tricep muscles, so we're starting to involve a little bit more of the back of the arms, which can get pretty tight too. We do a lot of pressing when we're on the bike, especially going through braking bumps and stuff like that. So we got a lot of that push-up muscle in the back of the arm for elbow extension. So another great one. Actually felt really good for me to do today. Don't have to do it kneeling. You can do it standing. Just for the sake of my setup today, kneeling was a really comfortable and good stretching position for me personally to be in. Moving on to the next is a chest stretch. So I'm going to do this on the floor for the chest. It's a very simple and easy way to do it, but you can also do it in a standing position, once again, on a box or up on your bike even. So a couple really good stretches to take for at the track as well. So for me, I'm going to go into a child's pose position, which is down with my head towards the floor here. Child's pose is just a yoga position, of course. And I'm just going to stretch this out a little bit. So it looks very similar to our lat stretch, but now we're down on the floor, so that intense overhead position is a little bit more relaxed. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go out to the side about 45 degrees, 50 degrees, and I'm going to turn my head to the opposite side here. I'm going to pull this arm back, and then I'm going to rotate my torso away from this arm here. That's going to be that nice chest stretch that we're going for there, little pec major, little pec minor, since I'm at that 45-degree angle, so I'm getting both of those muscles in the chest. I really like to even get a little bit of nerve stretching here. It's kind of feeling that nerve glide by lifting my hand up, which tends to be a little bit tight for me personally. especially that ulnar nerve, which runs on the inside of the elbow, also is what you bump when you bump your funny bone. So we're in that for about 30 seconds, and then we're gonna go back to our normal child's pose. Bring the arm back, opposite arm tucks out to 45, and we're just gonna lean away again. The more you twist, the more intense the feeling's gonna get. You're kind of using your opposite hand, the one that is tucked back, to kind of push and facilitate that twisting a little bit more. And remember, we're taking good breaths in the belly and out. Awesome. So if we're doing stretching routines and we're holding our breath, we're not relaxing. So we're actually playing more of like a tug of war with our muscles. So we need to make sure that we're taking good breaths in and letting them out and making sure we're feeling that belly move, which is also working the diaphragm muscle, which sits at the bottom of the rib cage, which is a muscle and also a part of the core. So it's a really important muscle for the core that we don't really think too much about. So strengthening through that diaphragm, through belly breathing, is a really good way of strengthening our core as well. All right, so moving on, now we are gonna move on to more dynamic movements, which can help ranges of motion in the joint rather than just stretching the muscles like we are just currently doing. So first thing is a down dog to Cobra. Some people call these dive bombers, some people call these roller coasters. Don't worry about that. We're gonna do about 5 of them together here. So first things first, we can take our time when we're doing these. So for a down dog, we're gonna go on our hands and knees in a quadruped position. We're gonna tuck the toes underneath, and then we're gonna raise our rear end up towards the ceiling. So we're gonna push away with our hands, which then is gonna drive our head more downwards in between our shoulders, and then we're gonna press that floor away. Really big stretch in the back of the legs. So this is our down dog. And then we're gonna dive through into the Cobra. That's one. We're gonna reset up. 2. 3. And this is gonna look different for everyone, okay? So don't base this necessarily just off myself. Everyone has their place where they're at with their flexibility and mobility. So don't worry too much if you're not going quite in the positions that I'm getting into. That's 4. We're gonna go one more. Triceps starting to get some work. Stretching the calves. And 5. Awesome. Moving on, we are gonna remain in that quadruped position on the hands and knees, and we're gonna do bird dogs. So bird dogs are a great movement for posterior shoulder activation, but also glute hamstring activation as we go through. So we're gonna go opposite leg and hand from this quadruped position. So we're still in the hands and knees. We're going to keep the toes either tucked or pointed, really kind of up to you. I like to tuck them just for my own comfort. And then opposite hand the leg. So my hand is gonna reach out with the thumb up towards the ceiling, and my back heel of the opposite leg is gonna push back towards the opposite wall. And I'm elongating my body while also staying activated here and lifting through that glute. Then I come right back down, and I'm gonna alternate. So we're doing 5 on each side, 10 total. I'm also focusing on that elbow pit in the front. So I'm turning that shoulder externally as I work through my bird dogs. That just keeps the shoulder more engaged, brings the rotator cuffs into the party just for a little more activation. Awesome. So really starting to feel warmed up after this too. You should feel a little bit warm with mobility. It's not something that we should just be lazily going through. It takes some work to get our joints to want to go past where they're comfortable with going. So our active range of motion compared to our passive is quite different, but we can work our active to get even closer to our passive, which is what we're trying to do here, of course. Moving on, we have supine scorpions. This one feels really good. I really like this one. So I'm trying to make a little bit of room here. So we're down on our backs now, so nice relaxing supine position. Arms are out to the sides, either palms down or palms up. That's up to you and your comfort. We're gonna go for 5 on each side again. We're gonna bring opposite foot to opposite hand, or bring it back down. Take some good breaths as we rotate and twist through the spine. It's not uncommon for the back to pop a little bit during this, so if you feel a crack or two, that's totally normal, and it's okay as long as it does not present pain and discomfort. It should just feel like a nice stretch. Excellent. So that was a lot of the lower spine rotation and also the hips twisting over with that supine scorpion. Next one is gonna be more of the upper back because we're gonna move to a thread the needle, which is actually one of my favorites here. So threading the needle, back in that quadruped position. This is a very common mobility position, also used a lot in yoga. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the right side first. And what we're gonna do is we're going to pull it like we're pulling a bow and arrow, reach up to the ceiling, and then we're gonna come through, bend our up arm, and reach through. Then we come back up, pull the bow and arrow. We're doing 5 on each side, so that's 2. All while maintaining good, even breath patterns. Last one on this side. Excellent. So now we're going to switch. This is a very common place for a lot of backs and that upper thoracic to be pretty tight. So if you're not moving quite as freely as myself, that's totally okay again. But unlocking the upper back can help the shoulder blades move better, which then in return can also help the glenoid joint of the ball and socket to move more freely and more safe, because when we can't move through that shoulder blade quite like we want to, we move too much through the glenoid, and we can have certain things like inflammation develop in there, and also potential for injury. Lastly, we're going to do quadruped wrist walks. So this one's gonna be really great for the shoulders and also the wrist, because we're gonna be in that quadruped position for quite some time here. So last exercise though, we're almost done. Back in that quadruped, we're going to walk our hands, and we're gonna turn our hands about 90 degrees at a time. So out, out, back, back, and then out, out, back, back, and then we're gonna go in, back here, and then we just keep rolling through. And this is 5 total, so each time we can even rock back, get a nice wrist flexor stretch in that one, back out, coming back around 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, and 90 degrees. So that's 2. If this position is discomforting to your wrist, being in a large extension with pressure, I definitely recommend going out and checking out my 5 exercises for the elbow, wrist, and hands, as there's some movements in there that can help to gain more space in the wrist so that your wrists don't feel so jammed while in this extended position. Boom. So that's 5 of those. So shoulders felt that, wrists are a little bit more opened up and free. Really feels nice to get that done, especially before we're gonna go do a day of riding. The wrists are very important, of course, gripping with the hands, but we kind of forget about the wrist because all the muscles that are in the forearm are what facilitates wrist motion. So really important to include that in the scheme of everything. Hopefully you like this, follow along. I'm gonna be doing much more of these as we go. So look forward to the next one. Thanks everyone.